Hi church family, Pastor Dan here, and to visitors, welcome to our devotional channel here at Rockhampton Baptist. Well, welcome back for 2023 to our video devotions. Last year, I was journeying through the last few months through the book of Hebrews, and we were tackling off a few verses each time as we progressed through the book of Hebrews. And it's a new year, but it's the same Bible, so we're going to continue through the book of Hebrews. So, because we only got up to chapter 4, and we're going to start chapter 5 today. So let's see if we finish it this year. So let me read chapter 5, verses 1 to 10. It says, "For every high priest chosen from among men is appointed to act on behalf of men in relation to God, to offer gifts and sacrifices for sins. He can deal gently with the ignorant and wayward, since he himself is beset with weakness. Because of this, he is obliged to offer sacrifice for his own sins, just as he does for those of the people. And no one takes this honor for himself, but only when called by God, just as Aaron was. So also Christ did not exalt himself to be made high priest, but was appointed by him who said to him, 'You are my son, today I have begotten you.' As he says also in another place, 'You are a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek.' In the days of his flesh, Jesus offered up prayers and supplications with loud cries and tears to him who was able to save him from death. And he was heard because of his reverence. Although he was a son, he learned obedience through what he suffered. And being made perfect, he became the source of eternal salvation to all who obey him, being designated by God a high priest after the order of Melchizedek." Now, just like chapter 4, the end of chapter 4 was taking on, we continue to start talking about Jesus' role in salvation as the high priest. And there's a contrast that the author draws here between the Old Testament high priesthood and Jesus' high priesthood role. They are similar and draw similar aspects from each other, but they are also distinct and different. Their roles were different. And the first one we see here in the early chapter 5 here is that the high priest was chosen among men, that men chose the high priest. The high priest in the Old Testament, they used to serve for a 12-month period and kind of serve for that year and different periods of time. And a new high priest would take that kind of role. And so we see the same thing here. But the high priest also wasn't sinless. Like every man and woman that has walked on the earth, we have sin in them. All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. And so when the high priest made an offering, especially on the Day of Atonement, that offering, they first had to make an offering for themselves, for their sin, and then they were able to enter the Holy of Holies and atone for the sins of the entire people, and to offer that offering for them. And it was different, though, for Jesus. Jesus was perfect. He was without sin. And so when Jesus did his high priesthood work in the heavenly Holy of Holies, he only had to offer the sins of the people, of us. He didn't have to make offering for himself because he was perfect. He was sinless. You know, the Old Testament, they served for a period of time and they had to make offerings for themselves. But Jesus, chosen by God, served eternally and was without sin. There's a contrast here between the high priesthood of Aaron, which is the Old Testament priesthood, and a priesthood, as referenced here, after the order of Melchizedek. Now, Melchizedek was a character in the Old Testament, a priest who Abraham made an offering to. And he just kind of appears and disappears in the Bible at the same time, almost having this eternal-like sense. He is without end. is some of the phrases that are used here. And it was that distinct offering and role that Jesus had. That through his life, even though Jesus had suffered in various aspects of this life, he was obedient in that suffering. He was without sin in that suffering. And so as he suffered, he was obedient, did not sin, and therefore through his death and offering, this demonstrates that he became the source of eternal salvation. He was obedient through what he suffered, and he became perfect, or being made perfect, it says. Therefore he was perfect, he did not sin, and he was able to be our source of salvation. As Jesus served as a high priest, different than earthly priests, of a different order, he became the perfect offering and what was offered for our eternal salvation. So we're going to continue in this over the next couple of weeks to break this down a little bit more and explain it. But if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Let me pray. Lord, I thank you for your offering, Lord, the way in which you, Jesus, lived your life in perfect obedience to the Father, in perfect obedience and without sin, and therefore you served as the perfect high priest. You served as the perfect offering. Lord, I thank you for that, Lord, and that you became our source of eternal salvation. Lord, help us to recognize that this week. Amen. Keep walking with God. Talk to him. Let him talk back with you as you read the Bible. And when he does speak, trust and obey. Keep looking for opportunities to bless others. We'll see you soon.